Hello there, and welcome to the TTP Field Manual podcast. Throughout the month of December, we will be releasing a series of character dossiers for our Advent Calendar project that we call Final Days. This is one of them. These shorter episodes will be each spotlighting a very specific character from across the lore and the tabletop of Warhammer 40k. The episodes will be very casual, a bit of an overview of the characters' personalities, what they've done in the lore, and a little bit about what they do on the tabletop. We wanted to do this as a bit of an easy listening, casual love for the hobby, just to round out the year. We hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for listening, and happy holidays.
Where mesh the cogs of industry, to grind between their ever-turning teeth the flesh and blood and soul stuff of the mortal and the infernal both. Where roars hungry furnace, its flames hope to devour, its heat to give life from searing crucible unto mortal ore and blood and bile a bubble. Where scratches the quill and clatter the keys by candle flame and cold buzzing lumen light, by desperate hand and mind obsessed, driven, set free by morality discarded. Where sparks the wire, where rides the cable, where blends the flesh and the adamant, where wakes the engine infernal, and where laments the bound and bargained soul. There do you find him, there do you see him, and in seeing does he know your heart, your mind, your price. There waits Vashtorr the Arkifane, and damnation is his gift. What a hell of a quote to describe a greater demon of chaos, right, Joshy?
Whoa, dude. He gives me old English lit vibes.
This is the topic of today will be Vashtorr the Arkifane, the rival to Be'lakor.
I'm excited. I love this guy. He's sick. He's very cool. Cool model, great rules, great presence in the lore.
And
Very fun.
very recent presence in the lore.
And a surprising amount of presence despite the recency.
Yeah, for sure. Vashtorr is, as I said, a greater demon of chaos who, unlike Be'lakor, who was forged by the Four, Vashtorr is his own entity created and completely separate to the main chaos gods. He is there to rule over the Forge of Souls, where demon weapons and demon engines are forged. He serves chaos undivided, but, as I said, claims no connection to any of the Four. He has his own influence and power and things that power him up, mostly being technological innovation at all costs. He is the demigod of inventors and engineers, scientists, artisans, all those wicked and wacky people who, push forward through curiosity no matter the means. The creators of doomsday devices and art both. It's got quite a large scope, and if we were to put an emotion to it, it would be closer to curiosity. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of curiosity, both of the individuals that observe him, as well as him in his younger energies, observing the material realm that has invented him and empowers him and benefits from him. There's not a whole lot of good or evil to him. He's just sort of like, oh, that feeds me. That is me. I want to see more of it. It's very cool.
Yeah. I like how structured and kind of critical he is, as opposed to a being of pure emotion. It's very strange to see in like a chaos demon. So Vashtorr doesn't have a lot of pre-Indomitus lore. He has existed as long as time can ever know and is kind of like the boogeyman in the closet sort of vibes, but doesn't really have much in the way of showing up. What we do have is a little bit more of what his role in the realm of chaos is, being that of the creator of demon engines. He has followers of the Chaos Cults and Chaos Undivided, For the most part, he is the broker, and he has his demonic followers who act as brokers as well. There, you will have demons who will come to Vashtorr for power and will pay a price. A lot of servitude and corruption in a mechanical sense. Very strict with his like binding contracts, and never a liar, never tricky and never deceitful. Everything is very honest and open with Vashtorr. He's not one to sit in the shadows and influence people like someone else we know.
Khorne.
Oh, Khorne wouldn't know how to exist in a shadow. The shadow yells at you.
I'm over here! Be scared of the darkness, I'm standing in it, says Khorne.
Vashtorr is just as likely to turn you into a soul grinder as he is to, offer you the power that you expect. It gives me kind of genie vibes, but not quite, because there is no trick and deceit. It's like, well, this is what I'm going to give you, and this is what it'll cost.
It gives me Faerun Archdevils.
Yeah, for sure. He also exists in this strange relationship with the four dark gods, in that they both need him and are a little fearful of him because of the respect aspect. They don't want to be the only chaos god that has lost access to Vashtorr's, offerings. He does supply war engines and demon engines for all four of the legions, or the ruinous powers, I should call them. But, if one of them lost out on those war engines, that would really put them in a hamperage against the others. So they kind of just let Vashtorr do his thing and let him just kind of act as an arms dealer, because frankly, he isn't as powerful as them currently.
Imagine if Khorne's like, oi, stop being so cheeky and just deliver me this shipment without waxing Shakespearean lyricism at me, because Vashtorr does talk a little bit goofy. And then Vashtor's like, mate, do you want your Khitan engines, Greater Scorpions, and Blood Slaughterers or not? And Khorne's like, oh.
Fine.
Yes, actually, I'm sorry.
This is where we will first really introduce like the differences between Be'lakor and Vashtorr. They both exist in very similar kind of veins with similar sort of goals, but Be'lakor being like a demon prince, whereas technically Vashtorr is a greater demon. He is a little bit more powerful. He's already closer to that demigod, but Be'lakor is so strong that these two kind of sit on a similar power level, kind of work in a very opposite way, with Be'lakor being very shadowy and deceitful, whereas Vashtorr is very honest and open. You've got Be'lakor, who was created by the four demon gods, whereas Vashtorr is created by none of them and is completely unrelated. Be'lakor is influenced by the gods, where Vashtorr is not. There's this big kind of rivalry that they kind of build up between these two. So that's kind of like the relationship between like Vashtorr and the multiple entities existing within the warp and vying for power.
You know what he reminds me of?
What is that?
He reminds me a little bit of the Fabius Bile of CSM, but for Chaos as a whole. He's the fellow that everyone's a bit like, oh, I don't know about him.
I don't like you.
But he also does the thing that nobody else does.
Yeah.
He sprung up from millennia of inventions from other species. So he's influenced by all the various weaponry and inventions of like the Necrons, of humankind, Eldari. Any invention has indirectly fed him, like how slaughter influences Khorne, sickness influences Nurgle, etc. So when you're trying to go up against Vashtorr in a hypothetical, he'll just be like, oh, so you know what I've got in my back pocket here? It's a thermonuclear device. Haha, catch.
When you think about some of the huge technological, ideas and revelations that are terrible things that have existed in the 40k universe, you've got like biotransference would have been a huge power bump for Vashtorr. You've got the dark age of technology you've got the creation of like the Adeptus Astartes or the Primaris. Like these are all inventive means that would have just fueled Vashtorr to become the entity he is today.
Johnny.
What?
Do you think that Vashtorr just has a mental spam folder for any time an orc convention comes through?
No, he'd have a rule set up in his email that it automatically gets deleted.
Incoming invention, bubble chucker. Nope. Discard, delete.
No. We don't need that. But again, like, orcs are quite inventive with what they do, and this is all fuel for Vashtorr. But he doesn't really show up in real space until we get to the era Indominatus. Oh, I did it again, Josh. The era Indominatus.
Ordinatus, Indomitus.
Exterminatus.
One of those words. One of those words. Something Gothic-esque. Indomitus. 42nd millennium, maybe.
Boy, oh boy, did he show up in a huge way.
You could say it's almost biblical. Upon an arc, one might say.
Yes. At the end of 9th edition, breaking the in-game lore for a second, at the end of 9th edition, they had a 4-part book/campaign release known as 5. I always forget about the Tau. I won't lie.
Fair.
It felt like the weird book in the lot.
It was.
Yeah, for sure.
But yes.
Where Abaddon went on a crusade. And who funded his crusade this time other than Vashtorr himself? He approached Abaddon, offering him the chance to defeat the Imperium once and for all, an end to the long war, if he assisted him in collecting these fragments of an artifact simply known as the key. And I hate that that is all it is known as, because it is the key to the lock for the weapon.
I see. Very straightforward.
Very Vashtorr, right? No beating around the bush. It is what it is. But nobody knows exactly what it is. And fractured artifacts that turn into the key are not necessarily just, like little pieces of metal, but giant pieces of artifice themselves, whether it be the core of something in the core of a planet or a huge metal rod that's, it's not your typical like key-shaped key. It's just an even more powerful artifact that can open up a subdimension that the Old Ones created as a vault to hold an Old One's weapon that nobody actually knows exactly what it is because it's been locked away for so long.
Jeez. He's like, here, this is my shopping list. And on it's just the One Ring, the Darksaber.
Yep. Yeah.
Everything possible. And Abaddon's like, I'm going to need some help.
And Vashtor's like, fine. And creates dozens, is the only way they describe it, because they don't give you an actual number. But dozens of these Arks of Omen being giant space hulks. They are huge ships on a scale that you can't physically comprehend as humans, really. Like planet-sized monstrosities that were used as like the flagships for these different fleets that were going to spread across the entire Milky Way to find these artifacts that have been scattered across space. It's a big hide and seek or treasure hunt.
There's some very interesting things that happen just in this opening section of the Arks of Omen. Like, as Vashtorr is making his appearance known, like Abaddon's crew kind of went against his orders and claimed this relic tome that the Dark Mech were like, yeah, that for some reason is something calling out to us, we should do it. And as all the cultists start reading from the book, the vengeful spirit starts going into like big meltdown mode.
Yeah.
And it's like the ship itself reoriented itself for Abaddon to be a little bit scared and a little bit like, what the hell's going on? And then from the bows of his ship comes demigod of the Smiths. Oh, I couldn't imagine being on board that ship.
Oh, it'd be a hell of a bad time.
And then the Arks of Omen themselves aren't even ships, as you pointed out. Like, they've got like demon pilots known as ferrymen. They've got like warp portals inside the ship. They've got like mechadendrites and bundles of slaves and wardings that don't make sense. They're not ships, really, as you pointed out.
Yeah, they're not necessarily ships, but they're just like giant demon engines that are being used as kind of void ships and flagships to travel around and collect this stuff, and obviously totally influenced by Vashtorr. But the real question is, what does Vashtorr want out of this key? Why is he looking for the key to the lock for the weapon?
I don't know, Johnny.
The answer is he's bored.
Is he?
He's sick of doing everything he does normally. This is why he's gone from basically only existing in the realm of chaos to suddenly being out in the world. He's looking for the next step, and that next step is godhood. His entire plan is to attempt to become the 5th chaos god, which you can imagine, not a lot of other demons like the sound of that.
I wouldn't.
No, how dare my rivals succeed, right?
We want only stalemate. We don't want another player.
So while Abaddon and the forces of chaos spread across the entire Milky Way searching for loot to gift to their new demonic demigod friend, Vashtorr doesn't just sit around and wait. He goes off in search of one of these fragments himself. He takes his own ark, the Aurak Unleashed, over to the home of the Dark Angels, the Rock, and decides that there's a fragment here somewhere and I want it. And he lays siege to the Rock. And this is where we get our friend back. Well, the Imperium get their friend back, as Lionel Johnson himself comes to the defense of the Rock.
Does he come to the defense of the Rock? I swear that was later.
Was it later? Is this not where he shows up?
I feel like he shows up at the
very end?
uppity end.
I know he definitely is involved in the very end. Maybe it's just Azrael that's here.
I'm fairly certain it's just Azrael, and then with everything going on at the very end.
Sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. It's a confusing mess of a multiple book thing, and we're kind of relying upon lore bites stitched together by other people rather than buying hundreds of dollars worth of books
that are no longer relevant. So he attacks the Rock and attempts to break it and get to the center where this object is, and is met with stark resistance from the people on the Rock known as the Dark Angels, and is fairly handily winning. He is a demigod after all, so there's not a lot of there's not a lot of resistance that the Dark Angels can really have against what is Vashtorr, along with his cult of the Arkifane and all of the reinforcements he has from Iron Warriors and Word Bearers.
Yeah, it's a lot to just be dropped on your doorstep because these fellows are deploying a little against the rules of warp travel.
Yeah.
They don't need to travel at normal, where you can sort of detect their presence before they fully arrive, or they arrive but they still have to travel the solar system a little bit. No, with the Arks of Omen and stuff and Vashtorr, they can just, whoop, here we are.
Yeah, because of this assault on the Rock and the general region, one of the worlds of the Imperium failed to send their tithe because of a Chaos Knight invasion that was linked to this whole thing. And the Imperium sent Tigerius to work out what the hell was going on. After learning that it was in fact House Korvax that were assailing this place, God. House Raven
I know these guys.
Also tried to help out. House Raven being the remainders of House Korvax before they were corrupted by Daddy B.
Gosh, they must have been confused.
Oh man. Alongside the House Korvax were some of the Fallen, being Dark Angels who fell together.
Oh my God.
You're going to hear names left, right, and center, right?
I do really enjoy this.
And this is just happening on the side of, Vashtorr invading the Rock itself. But due to that, they're like, hold on, why are they here? They're not meant to be here.
Swear I don't know. I swear I don't, Johnny. Please tell us why they're here.
Well, while that's all going on, we have Vashtorr. While Vashtorr was assaulting the Rock, all of the Dark Angels fleets that normally are defending the Rock were on their way to Marwyn's Reach to reinforce whatever was going on between Tigerius and these Chaos Knights and Fallen, because, as soon as the Dark Angels hear the word fallen, they're like, we'll be there, before having to then return to try and help with this problem, having suffered heavy losses in this fight. And this is part of the reason why Vashtorr and the Aurak were able to assault the rock fairly easily. Most of the forces weren't home. Right as things were getting real bad for the Dark Angels, though, someone showed up to help them. And not the person we thought it would be. It was actually Be'lakor and his shadowy friends. He saw that, Vashtorr was taking a big play at what he needed to do and decided that he didn't want Vashtorr to be in power. So he brought some friends just to slow down Vashtorr a little bit and annoy the hell out of him. Because why not, right? These sibling rivalries just go so well, don't they?
I agree. I'm just perusing the Warhammer Vault to see if they have the Arks of Omen series, and they don't.
Of course not. They've got rules in them.
Of course not. But the very first White Dwarf issue that's in the vault that displays for me has Vashtorr on the cover.
Nice.
It's like a bit of a fuck you guys.
That's brutal. So yeah, Be'lakor shows up to stop Vashtorr and 1v1s Vashtorr in a bit of a duel, giving him shit the whole time, like just talking absolute smack to Vashtorr.
You got some quotes?
I don't, unfortunately, I don't have quotes because I don't have the book. But this obviously angers Vashtorr quite heavily, and these two are very similarly matched. But Vashtorr manages to come off on top as Be'lakor is momentarily distracted due to the reinforcements that have arrived to help the Dark Angels. And then Be'lakor goes, peace out, bitch, and slips back into the warp, leaving Vashtorr in a position where now he's on the back foot and also has to flee. Luckily enough, he manages to secure the key fragment he was after before getting off the planet.
Good stuff.
At this point,
good job, Vashtorr.
Vashtorr has managed to collect all the fragments he needs and retreats to another part of the universe to assemble the key. Luckily for the Dark Angels, they managed to capture a few Chaos Space Marine prisoners and torture a name of a system out of them, which is the only reason that they know where Vashtorr has run off to. And obviously they pursue. Because,
makes sense. How dare
they just had their homeworld attacked. Of course you want to stop them, right?
Yeah, how dare he?
So they follow Vashtorr to this separate part of the universe where they very quickly see something they are very familiar with, as they find the ruins of their original homeworld, Caliban, having been turned into a demon world, a mechanical monstrosity known as Wormwood. Shout out to Wormwood Gaming.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored. But if they want to, please. Part of Caliban survived its destruction, and Vashtorr decided that that is what he will turn into the key. Upon seeing this, obviously the Dark Angels are rather angry and decide, we are going to attack the planet, force an area, and use the biggest exterminatus that has been used since the Horus Heresy. They're like, if we can't have it, nobody can. Well, that was the plan. That becomes the Battle of Idolatros, where we have a whole bunch of people fighting on this planet, including Angron, and the arrival of, as I mentioned earlier, Lionel Johnson, because this is where he shows up. Because they are not really related to what Vashtorr is doing, I will mention that the Lion does manage to injure and cause Angron to lose and retreat, because the Lion is absolutely insane in melee combat.
You really undersold what he did to him.
Go for it.
So, on the battlefield, all of the forces of Angron were just quite savage and really messing up the Dark Angels. And Azrael himself kind of resolved himself to having to deal with this. Dante himself was like, all right, I guess I'm up. I don't think we can deal with this, but we're going to have to try. And then the Lion basically is like, no, it's my turn. This humongous fight between the Lion and Angron. They even hurtling off a cliff down towards lava. It's looking pretty rough. And then the lion just unce, anger on a couple of good times, and then mounts the freaky guy and then basically beheads him by like slamming the shield through his neck.
Yep, which sends him whisked back to the warp until he returns at a later date.
Yeah, this would feel pretty cheap if not for the fact that the lion is probably the most lethal of all the Primarchs in a fight. Yeah. So if like Guilliman did this, you'd be like, really?
But no, the lion is very capable.
Yeah.
So they managed to do a lot of damage to Wormwood and basically left it in ruins. They managed to push back Abaddon, but Space Marines had taken significant losses and decided to retreat before Wormwood self-destructed and killed everything in this area. They all managed to get back out of the system, having retreated, and Abaddon, while defeated, was pretty happy with, how many Space Marines had been defeated here and killed. So he jumps on board his ship and buggers off as well. Vashtorr contacts Abaddon, is like, don't worry, I got this, and has finished awakening the key, which causes Wormwood to survive its own destruction and ascend and become the key. And this is kind of the end of the Arks of Omen campaign with, Abaddon having pretty much succeeded exactly what he wanted. This is a big W for Chaos and a big L for the Imperium. And Vashtorr now has his key and is in search of the lock. Because heaven forbid he knew where the lock was before finding the key. The last kind of moments for this is Wormwood tearing open a rift and disappearing into the webway of all places. Because heaven forbid he go back to the warp, right?
Of course, mate.
And that is the last thing we hear of Vashtorr in the Arks of Omen. The next time he shows up, and the most recent time that he has shown up, is actually towards the end of the Pariah Nexus campaign, or I guess the most recent part of the Pariah Nexus campaign. It's technically not over yet.
Well, yeah, you got to leave all the war zones open, right? You can't resolve Armageddon. You can't resolve Nakmund. You can't resolve Chalnoth. You can't, resolve the Nephilim anomaly, which is now the Pariah Nexus. Then you would run out of rulebooks to sell to people every edition.
Imagine they had a new conflict. That's not Armageddon 4.
To be fair, this one's actually pretty fresh.
This is, yes.
This one's developed quite nicely.
I was going to say, it's fresh, but this region has been in turmoil for quite a while. Did you want to give the listeners a quick look into what the Pariah Crusade is before I talk about why Vashtorr showed up and how Vashtorr showed up?
Yeah, sure. The Pariah Nexus is what was previously known as the Nephilim anomaly, the Nephilim region of space. What this is basically in the wake of the Great Rift, the Necrons, unified under good old Silent King Zarek, thinks, well, we need to limit this whole chaos thing. All those Blackstone pylons we have, we could create a nodal matrix of such a thing. This region of space will be our prototype, and we're going to cut this region of space off from the warp. In that way, we, as Necrons who don't really care for the warp, can exist in peace without the threat of chaos. Secondarily, by turning off the warp, we are more or less turning the human populace and other sentient races into soul-numbed zombies, because the warp is like a spiritual component to all creatures. And so it's also secondarily like a research center for people like Illuminor Xeras to figure out if reversing the biotransference is possible. Now, naturally, the Imperium doesn't like this, and so various Crusade fleets and allies of the Imperium, including Belisarius Cawl, first and foremost, with his AdMech, have been deployed to try and stabilize and recover the region. Other elements of the Necron forces are like, well, I don't really want to be flesh. I like being metal. And so there's a lot of just like high powers at play, all the while, people like the Black Templars, the Battle Sisters, Gilliman, Cole, they're all like, can you just leave the humans alone? But the actual Blackstone pylons is what attracts your homie, Mr. Vashtorr.
Yeah, there's this big fight between the two civil factions at war of the Necrons and the Admech, where they're kind of throwing doomsday devices at each other a little bit, in this war to one-up each other on what they've done, and all of this incredible use of artifice kind of like sends a ping Vashtor's way, and where he's like, oh, that's my jam. Let's go see what's going on. And he kind of just shows up to watch what's going on. There's not really a plot or anything like that, but he does definitely bring a whole bunch of Chaos allies who are there just to cause trouble. But he himself shows up with Wormwood and kind of just sits there and watches, because this is exactly what he exists for. This is artifice and creation, and he's kind of just curious what's going on. Because he shows up, though, we do have a couple of other, power players who show up because of Vashtorr. Primarily, Magnus has this big prophecy and sees at least one future where Vashtorr actually succeeds in his goal to become a true Chaos God, and is like, hold on, we can't let that happen. And Magnus and the Cult of Prophecy initiated a plan to try and stop Vashtorr. Because everyone wants to stop Vashtorr, And that introduces the Cult of Knowledge using their pre-heresy automata into the prior Nexus campaign as they attempt to disrupt Vashtorr and kind of just get caught up in the conflict. The main reason that, Magnus doesn't show up himself is because, as we discussed, like the Blackstone pylons are a little messy-wessy when it comes to the warp, and particularly psychers and sorcerers have a really bad time. Like, it's physically painful just for them to exist here. So they send some other sorcerer to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Don't want to be in pain myself. We got lackeys for that. So they send the Cult of Knowledge and a bunch of robots, which get caught up fighting all the robots of the Imperium as well. But that is basically the last we have seen of Vashtorr at this point. This is fairly recent lore, having only really come out in the last couple of years. So we are waiting to see how this quest to godhood goes. Does he find the lock? Where is it? What is the weapon? How does it work? Who does he ascend, or is it all just a myth? We're all just kind of on the hook as well, as Vashtorr is obviously got his feelers out in the universe trying to find this lock that his key needs to go into, while kind of just sitting around and waiting.
I have a couple of passages here from the official Prior Nexus Crusade supplement that I think are pretty neat for portraying the power and sort of outlook of Vashtorr, if you'd like.
Oh yeah, go on. That would be a good way for us to round out this episode.
So in general, Vashtorr struggles a little bit with things like the material realm. There's even like a part of the overall writing that suggests he isn't actually quite comfortable with the fact that the material realm has its own laws of physics that he has to navigate. Like, he's a little confused by the fact that time has a particular flow, which I think is kind of interesting. Like, he's able to, in the warp, invent backwards through time as well as forwards. So when he's in the real space, he's still learning it in a sense. But the first of two sample things here, two extracts I've got for you here, are both from the Prior Nexus when he has just appeared in the Nexus. The demon demigod reached the tower top and gazed out upon the wreck-strewn starfield of the Scaran system, where it spread across the heavens above. The nearest planet, he saw, was even now in its death throes. Wormwood's immaterial gravity, the energies that had gone into its making, tore at the luckless world so that its continents writhed and cracked. Oceans boiled and scoured the land. Mountains crumbled upwards. Millions of tiny, squirming beings tumbled up from the world's surface into the cold of the killing void. He saw scattered like haloing flies around the dying world the ships of humans and others of Necrons, two most agreeable species, Vashtorr's estimation. Pliant, easily encouraged, and so delightfully inventive. Alas, that your erasure must I engineer here in this place, for you are now but grit in the flywheels to be whisked away. Machines have you made for such purpose as I cannot condone. The Arkifane turned the entire tower top with a sweeping gesture of his hammer. Cogs span around one another in screeching welters of sparks. Cyclopean pistons thundered deep below Vashtorr's hooves as the tower craned at his urging to show him a new view. And now we skip forward a little. Thanks steam and iron and pain for my cogs then, he muttered to himself. Another sweep of his hammer, another titanic industrial convulsion of the tower beneath him, and Vashtorr was looking out upon wave after wave of attack craft spreading out from Wormwood's orbit to fall upon the scattered human and Necron forces. He saw the pugnacious warships of Chaos Space Marine warbands, the jagged vessels of Dark Mechanicum covens wreathed in roiling fume and leaping energies, and confections of flesh and metal, tentacle and wing, and flame that were demon warships, making sail on tides of pain and fear. Many of these he knew had taken to travelling in the wake of Wormwood, daring the rotted, cog-churned passageways it bored through liminal space, and that collapsed gradually after its passing. Others were dark pilgrims, drawn to Wormwood by strange visions, or a desire for the Arkifane's blessings, and established strongholds amongst its perilous environs. Then, of course, there were the many demonic entities indentured to his service. All would wreak havoc in the Arkifane's name. All would seek to catch his eye and win his approbation, almost as though he were a fully fledged chaos god already. The notion pleased him. It also spared him the mundane considerations of war, at least for the time being. Let his cogs infest the mechanisms of that which was real in this place. Let them descend upon Necron and human alike, and render them into offerings they hoped would please him. Sparks, he rumbled to himself, dismissing the battling mortals after only the briefest consideration. Vashtorr had great works to undertake in this region of the galaxy, mighty revolutions of cog and gear to set in motion. He could not trouble himself with the petty flickerings of mortal thought and deed, not yet, at any rate. The Arkifane would attend to his labours, and afterwards, he promised himself, he would have some fun. And that's some of the official writings for Old Mate Vashi.
Pretty sick, eh? No, this guy is absolutely awesome.
You have a big smile on your face, I can hear it.
That's all I've got for you today for Vashtorr. There's so much that went into the Arks of Omen that if it's something that you're interested in hearing more about, I definitely suggest looking into it because it's a wild ride from start to finish. There's a lot of characters that are involved in that campaign and heading towards the potential 500 worlds that we have coming up next year for the end of 10th edition. We're expecting very similar sort of vibes for lore and what's going on, you know, and it'll be interesting to see if any of these players show up again.
Surely they will.
That's all I got for you, Joshy.
Pretty good going of things you've got for me, mate.
Oh yeah, right?
Far out. Just want to once again mention how sick that fellow's model is. I would just own it without having a CSM army. But even though I don't need a CSM army, if I were to, Johnny, as we've talked about increasingly, I would do a Vashtorr list. He and his demon vehicles and aura abilities, and like he's got one ability, reorder reality. So if people are shooting him, they just automatically have hazardous on his guns because he turns their weapons against them. I'm like, ooh, that's cool.
Very flavorful. both in the model and in the actual game itself. Absolutely
But
fantastic.
yeah,
Sick.
thank you. Thank you for putting together such a fun episode, my friend. I love Vashtorr.
I knew
You've
did.
got me excited again.
We'll see you next time, eh?
Happy holidays.
Peace out.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more on the way, so stay tuned. If you can, it would mean a lot to us if you could share this with friends, people you know will probably enjoy the episodes that we're putting out. If you are enjoying the Field Manual podcast, if you've been really enjoying these episodes and want to share your thoughts with us, maybe have some ideas about what you'd like us to cover next, jump onto our Discord. There'll be a link in the bio of this episode. It's a fun little community we're hoping to grow, where people can come in, share their work in progress photos, have a chat about the hobbies, chat with us, we'll chat with you. We chat about our upcoming book clubs and things of that nature. Love to see you there. Thank you very much.